Hello, everyone. Good morning, afternoon, or evening from whatever time zone you may be joining us in from today. My name is Rebecca Cronin, and I'm one of the customer success managers here with the Altair data analytics team. Now, some of you might recognize my voice from participating within our complimentary onboarding sessions, or perhaps seen my name throughout the user community. The customer success team, we're here just another point of reference and contact into Altair for any questions you may have. If you're unable to get a hold of your account manager, we'll definitely provide the assistance in getting you the resources needed. As well, if you haven't had the chance to register to our user community, we would also be able to help grant you access into there. It's just another way to leverage additional resources for further enabling your Monarch knowledge. Some little housekeeping. On the left there in your control panel, you should actually see a handout section. Uploaded 2 documents. One is a copy of today's PowerPoint, as well as a reminder of the reference template sheet. So when you're creating those different templates within Monarch as you're doing your trapping, something might be helpful to download and print out as a reference. You should also see the question panel. So please feel free at any time during the presentation to submit your question. If it's something you would like to have answered offline and private, please put that in the comment when you submit the question. Otherwise, we'll share it openly here with everyone in attendance today. And we are recording this session. So usually by Friday, definitely by Monday, we'll have this uploaded to our user community. So along with this presentation today or any of the past presentations, again, in the user community, within the knowledge base section under webinars and presentations, note you must be logged in to see it because it's gated. You would then be able to filter down for Monarch and then narrow in for the topic Ask the Expert, and you'll find this session along with all the others. The questions that you submit today, by the way, they do not have to be in relation to our topic. The topic that was voted from our last session from our attendees was a request for an overview of the classic interface. So if you had questions again about Monarch Server or whether it's the Data Prep Studio, please feel free. This is open for Monarch knowledge in general. I'd like to now introduce you to our expert. It's Chris Porthouse. He's one of our senior professional services consultant. He's been within the technical industry business for over 15 plus years, probably even more. Some of you may have had the pleasure of working with him directly with some of our paid professional service engagements, or perhaps seen responses within the user community itself. Chris has been a tremendous help, not only for our customer base, but for us as well internally. So with no further ado, I'm going to make Chris presenter. So let me just find him. And we're going to dive right into that topic. So here we go, Chris. I'm going to make you presenter.
Okay, thank you. All right.
And I see your classic.
Great, thank you. So as Rebecca mentioned, we're going to just kind of do an overview of the Monarch Classic mode. So anyone that's been dealing with Monarch for any amount of time probably started way before we had Data Prep or Monarch Complete, and this is what everyone was familiar with. This was like a huge redo back, I think, in version 12, but anything when we started bringing in the binary models here. But so right now I have my open screen for Monarch Classic. This is the latest release, 2021.1. So it might look slightly different from what you have, but you can have multiple versions installed here as well. So I have going back to version 15 on my laptop. When you first launched Classic, again, now depending on which version you had, if you had version 16 when you first installed it, a lot of times it would, even though you won't go to launch Classic, it would launch you into Data Prep Studio. This version, it does not appear to have the checkbox, but we'll show you in the previous version. So if you are running version 16 or 2020, move it up here. If it's always launching into Data Prep Studio and you really want to be in Classic, The best way around that is to, under the Home tab, under these the Options button, again, this is only for version 2020 or earlier, because it doesn't appear to be in version 2021. But under the View button, there's a checkbox here. It says Data Prep Studio, and by default, when we installed it, it would say Start in Data Prep Studio. So you'd want to come in here and just deselect that, and then either make this the default and make this the default setting. That way, if you really want to be in Classic, when you launch Classic, it will stay in Classic and not just open up in Data Prep Studio. Again, this is for version 2020 or earlier. So I'm just going to kind of close out of this one for now. As you can see, if I look in 2021 or version 17, that oops, wrong one. Hang on a second. This is the old version. There we go. In 2021, that checkbox is no longer there. So if you do have the new version, that shouldn't be an issue. Should no longer be an issue. Right. So having said that, this is the latest release, 2021.1. The next release, I think, is due out in about 6 months. So you should have time to get this release here. If for some reason you do want to go into Data Prep Studio, that you still have that option up here. You just simply click this button up here and it'll launch you into Data Prep Studio. Right? So by default, when you launch Monarch, you will be presented with this home screen. A couple things to be aware of with the home screen. Usually it will open up with like your most recent projects here, but you can kind of navigate off of this screen by using these little arrows to the left or to the right or to the left. And it'll just kind of walk you through. If I had a model loaded here, right now I have nothing loaded. There's like nothing really special to see here, but if you had any models loaded, it would show you the model information you have here, and I'll show that here in a second. So this is like the model information screen, and I can look at the two buttons up here, model or project. This will just give you information on if you have a project loaded or a model loaded. And the next navigation over presents you with an audit trail for any models or projects you have opened up. Again, this is brand new. I just hit the start menu, launched Monarch Classic, and this is what I'm presented with. And if I click the navigation button again, it just brings me right back to the beginning here. All right. In Classic, it's slightly different than Data Prep. So where you have like the Prepare, the Summary, and Analyze tabs, or Export, Analyze tabs in Data Prep, we've kind of similar tabs up here, but these are actually kind of true tabs. So I'm going to open up something here in a second just to demonstrate it. But I can't really, there's nothing in here to really show because I have nothing loaded yet. But we have the tabs up here. Starting in version 12, so anyone that's pre version 12, this is totally different than what you're used to seeing. But we emulate like Microsoft's ribbon bar. So all these tabs up here have a context-specific ribbon bar up here. But one other thing I want to quickly point out within Classic, before you start loading any files in here, is going to be, if you're brand new, it'd be to your benefit to just take a few minutes to come on the Home tab here to click on the Options button to actually set some of the default options. So anytime you click on this Options button here, any of these changes you make are usually model specific. So you can actually make it, for instance, if I was going to change like the date format, I could just change it for a specific model, or I could just make it my default settings. Generally, what I like to do, I kind of run through these little tabs up here at the very beginning. Right now, I'm on the Folders button right here. I like to change this because by default, it'll say Start at a default folder, and it'll be like your users, public documents, reports, data, model, project. By default, Monarch always sticks everything in separate folders. I tend to, like for my workflow, I tend to put stuff in the same folder. So my models, my projects, my work files are all in the same folder. I just kind of bucket it that way. So I tend to also, instead of say Start at a default folder, I'll say track between sessions. So next time I launch Monarch, it'll remember where I left off, and I can just kind of open up the last folder I previously used. All right. And then, so that's for the folders one. So take a few minutes to decide like where you want your stuff to show up. Again, I tend to point to the same folder or say track between sessions. That way I just know where to go to get my data. The next one down here, the input, very something you should be aware of, especially if you're dealing with any kind of like European format dates. So right now I have my month, day, year format. Whereas if I was using something over in the UK or something like that, where they do day, month, year, actually I have that backwards, Steve. But you can change that. And again, this is one of those things I do change that. And I hit this accept button. This is only going to change it for this particular model or session I'm working in right now. If I want this to remain or stay sticky, I would come down here, this little button in the lower left, and say, make these the default settings. So anytime you want to make a change and you want this to always have the same change every time you launch Monarch, you're going to want to make sure you select this, make these the default settings. And if you totally go off the rails and you want to act like a fresh install, you can always click on the button down here. It says restore from default settings. All right. So again, take your time to go through the buttons here when you're first using Classic and just set these up for what you'd like to see. So like we have for the any input field, so we have for any inputs, how you want to handle the fields, for text files. If you have something coming off a mainframe that uses carriage controls, you can kind of say, highlight the first leading character on each line if necessary, something along that lines. Something new, I heard when this came in, this automatically redacts sample text. So if you do share your models, any of the sample lines that are used to create the models might contain like sensitive information, like whether it's credit card information or social security number, anything like that. That's stored within the model file. You can actually select this checkbox and it'll redact the sample text. So you wouldn't necessarily see, be able to see what the underlying data was once you share the model. Let's see, for Excel files, nothing special here. These ones right here, I'm not too concerned with. These are more one-off cases, especially if you have a special, like you almost never have to change these options right here is what I'm getting at. So, and actually with the trapping, I will mention, same thing as data prep. Anytime you do your templates, when you're building out your traps, we always mention the traps are case insensitive. So if for some reason you need it to be case sensitive, this is where you come in and change that, where it says non-regex traps are case sensitive. So the other thing I like to point out to everybody is this view button. Again, I usually disable the show splash screen just because it saves a couple seconds on launch. But by default, like your null values will always show null. And again, I find it visually distracting. So if I don't want to see the word null in here, when the value can't, or the field can't be calculated or extracted, I'll just come over here and just remove. Some people do need, like Classic does not give you the visual indication like data prep does with the pink shading on the cell. So if you do actually have to see this as a null value, again, put anything you want in here, and by default, it's going to have the null in parentheses here. All right. Let's see. Export. Nothing major in here. We can talk about it if we had more time, like during one of the training sessions. But this is where you can actually set your page headers and footers. Like if you're printing this out, like almost like a Word doc, like headers and footers, you can set what you're seeing here for your printing. So I'm gonna skip over export, talk about Clipboard here. This is another thing that always gets people. A lot of people like to extract their data in Monarch, and rather than having to export all the data, they'll go to their table view and just kind of select a few cells and copy that and then paste it into Excel or into Notepad or something like that. You can control that behavior, how Monarch's going to fill your clipboard. So if you want to see the column headers when you copy that, even though you're copying some cells in the middle of your table, and you want to know what those columns were, or the headers for those that range of data, you can choose as checkboxes, include field names as the first row. So again, if you're pasting data and you want to know what columns those came from, you would select this checkbox, say include field names as the first row. If you don't want to see that when you're pasting in a notepad or something like that, you just uncheck it. And then if you're actually going to a text format, how should be pasted? Is it tab delimited or fixed length? So, clipboard. The rest of these I'm not going to really talk about. This is more specific if you have automator, time intervals, won't talk about. This advanced, I will mention real quick, for advanced, way back when, Monarch might crash every now and then. It's kind of a lot better, but you can actually change. We actually have an auto save feature in here, just in case it does crash. Mine's set for 5 minutes, but you can choose anywhere from never up to 10 minutes. So if your Monarch does crash on like say a particularly IO intensive operation and you run out of resources and Monarch just closes, next time you launch Monarch, if you have this auto recovery on, you'll get prompted that, hey, I saw your work on something. Do you want to save what you were working on? It gives you the chance to recover. Some of this other stuff down here, I wouldn't necessarily change or touch unless you talk to support. Like there's no need to have logging on, and it'll actually put on maximum or debug. It will just slow Monarch down a little bit. So don't mess with anything down here unless support kind of prompts you for that. Cache, again, I wouldn't necessarily change this. It's all about performance, what you're trying to do. By default, I believe it's set to maintain cache between sessions, which gives you the best performance. I tend to work on a lot of customer projects. So I usually have this delete the cache on exit, which just kind of wipes out my machine. I'm not necessarily reading stale data when I load something else in here. And themes, I mean, nothing to say about this. So it's, you have two options. I don't think particularly either one of them is all that great, but yeah, themes. But anytime you make a change on this options page here, and you want to save that change, make sure you click this green accept button. Just like with data prep, the accept and cancel buttons actually have consequences. Anytime you make a change on these screens, you hit that cancel button, all those any changes you made will be discarded and it'll revert back to what you had prior to going into whatever screen. That holds true for options, your report design, your table design, summary, and export design as well. All right, but having quickly run through the option screen, let's just kind of jump in the meat and potatoes with Classic. Very similar to data prep, obviously because data prep was designed off of Classic here. But I'm going to load one of our sample music files that we always use for training classes. And let's see, let's bring in the Classic here. And again, I'm just going to use the drag and drop method. I have a Windows Explorer open up another screen, but I can just drag and drop that file in here. And what that does, it brings me right into report view. All right, so each tab up here has a view and a subsequent design button. So our home view is just this. So report view, so if I select the tab, it'll show you the report. Table view will have nothing because I don't have a Monarch table designed yet. And then summary view and export view, which we don't really have anything ready to do yet. But we have our report view. Again, this is a sample music shipping report that we use, one of our canned reports. Now in data prep, it automatically drops you into report design or the into report design. In Classic, it's one extra step you have to go through now. So right now I'm in report view. So if I want to go into the design mode, report design, I would just come up here in the upper left here and click on the report design button. Notice every single tab, report, all the way through export has its own special design button. So you kind of know which one you're going to be working on. But if I want to build a quick model here for a shipping report, I would just come up here into report design. If you're licensed for it, you can always click on the auto define. It would make its best guess to actually create a model for you. But I'm going to quickly do a quick one just so I can show you the other tabs here. One of the big things with differences between Classic and data prep is that you're unable to, there's not a lot of right clicking available in design mode here, whereas in data prep, you can always right click and select your templates. it's the same concept. When we're building out our templates, it's always the same 4 steps. We're going to choose our sample lines, choose our template, choose our trap, choose our fields. It's the same principle. But again, I would have to, for instance, if I was going to select this as my sample line, I'd select my sample line, but I can't right-click to say create a template. To actually create the template, I have to come up here to the button that says New Template, select it, and then I can choose what template type I'm looking for. I'm just going to select Detail, and I'm just going to build this out real quick in Classic, and then I'm not even going to bother naming these fields or anything, but generally speaking, I quickly drew my, oops, and I forgot, did my trap and my fields. So I quickly did all 4 steps. I selected my line. I selected the template by coming up here. I did my trap by using the little decimal over the dollar amount, and then just drew my field. The layout is slightly different from data prep, as you might notice that our field properties are over here on the right side instead of on the left. And data prep is kind of consolidated to have the template list at the top and then the field list right below it, the field properties right below it. But everything is kind of hidden over here on the right side. Okay. Same features, if you have to change the data type, you can always change it here. Not going to really change anything here. The one thing is, well, one of the slight differences between Classic and data prep. In data prep, you have a separate tab up here for your field properties. I can't remember the name of it now, but it's like almost an advanced feature for the field. So for instance, like if you're trying to capture a multi-line field, like say for like our customer here, let's do another template real quick. And do my trap on customer and choose Betty's Music Store. Now, anyone that's gone through the training course know that, it's like we want to grab, say, this whole address block, but we can't really select a multi-line sample for consistently because in our data, it could be anywhere from 3 lines up to 7 lines. But I need to select multiple lines here. In data prep, there's a separate tab that you can actually click on. In Classic, that is kind of hidden behind this Edit Field button up here. So right above our trap line, there's a button that says Edit Field. So I'm going to click on that, and that actually brings up the advanced field properties. It brings up another screen. So we have our general tab, which kind of shows you the name of the field, the data type and everything, template part. But this advanced tab right here is what you'd see as a separate tab on data prep, where in this case, I'm going to go where my end field on is going to be a blank field value. Once I select that, I want to make sure I hit accept. It'll bring me back in here, and you can now see that I've selected that whole block. So it's kind of, this edit field button has been moved to be actually part of the field properties in data prep, but in Classic it's just above the trap line here. So anyone that is familiar with using the advanced properties of fields, and you're trying to use it in Classic, that's where you're gonna have to come to, is right here. Okay. Yeah, this is probably good enough just to at least get us started here to run through this real quick. Now, again, you'll notice I have an accept and cancel button up here. So I want to make sure if I hit cancel right now, I'm pretty much going to lose the 2 templates I just created. So I'm just going to make sure I hit accept, and that brings me back into report view. Right? Now that I have a file loaded and some templates created, I can come over here to this table tab, and where I had nothing before, now I actually have my Monarch table here listed. And same thing, I can see at the bottom how many rows are created here. And it's kind of a status here, no filter, no sorts created. So this is where, once you have your reports and your templates done, this is where you're gonna do a lot of your work here in Classic. This is very similar to the Prepare tab and Data Prep. Here it's just called Table Design. Right. So let's see where it's going here. table here. Now, if I go to summary, I can actually, this is no longer grayed out. I can actually start building a summary since I have a table to build a summary off of, and export again. This was always available because within Classic, you do have the ability to export your input file, which you don't have that option in data prep. But back on table view, a couple other things to be aware of when you're playing around with the tabs up here. Right now, as you can see, I have my list of tabs going across the top, and there's a ribbon bar in the middle here between my table here. If I were to double click on here, the tabs here, it actually minimizes. So if you're tight on screen real estate, you can actually expand or how much you're viewing by hiding the ribbon bar. So it's set to auto hide right now. You can kind of keep it. If I come off of here and just click, the ribbon bar will go away. If I want to see it, I can either hit the little pin here in the lower right of the ribbon bar to keep it on, or just by double clicking, it'll also pin it as well. All right. So if you do a lot of clicking, sometimes you accidentally double click and accidentally hide the tab or the ribbon bar. So to get it back, just double click the tabs again. Right. Now, one of the nice features with Classic, and because these are tabs, we have a nice ability to follow the data, I guess is the best way of putting it. So I can I can correlate my table data in my table back to a particular report. And just to show that even better, I'm going to load a couple more files in here. So again, I'm just going to drag and drop these in here. I get an option. Do I want to retain the reports and model? I'm like, yes. So now I can have 4 reports loaded. And if I go back to my table view, instead of now I have 421 rows in here. Now where that comes in handy is like say I was looking at my data and I was questioning where, like say this row of data came from. I could either click on this button up here that says find report, or right click and say find in report. And what that will do is jump me back to my report view, select the report that it came from, and also highlight the particular line that I was looking at in my table view. Same thing if I were looking in, let's look at the January report here, and I want to find where like this person returned something. I wanted to find this line item in my table. I could just kind of click on the line, either right click and say find in table, or at the top here in the ribbon bar, click find in table. It'll bring me back to table view and then bring me right to that row where that data comes from. Okay. Now the nice thing is, like data prep, we can't do that back and forth. Classic actually, you go one step further with it. So rather than having to click on my report view, like this jumping back and forth, may I have more than one screen, or may I want to see the table and my report side by side. Because these are tabs, we can actually, right now these are all essentially docked to our main screen here. I can take, for instance, if I take my table view here, the tab, if I left click and hold that, I can drag that away from the screen. Right now it's just floating. I can just let it go. And you can kind of see if I can like move it off the screen, put it on another screen somewhere, bring it back. So I can just kind of stick it like this, so I can look at the report and the table. But it's even a little bit easier to deal with if I take the tab again. And if I hold it, you'll notice in the middle of my screen, I have some like basically handlebars in the middle. So it'll let me dock this either to the top, to the right, my mouse froze here, to the bottom or to the left. Or if I hit the middle box here, it just returns it back to what we had before here. But in this case, I want to take the tab. I'm going to say dock it to the right side of my screen. So that allows me to see my report view on the left side and the table view on the right. And if I scroll down to a report or a line here and say find and report, notice I'm still on the screen and my report view changed. Same thing, it went right to the report. This one came from February and highlighted that particular line. So again, depending on your size of your monitor, this gives you a great opportunity to actually look at your data side by side. So if you're questioning where something came from, for instance, like why am I missing the quantity here? I can always go find a report and see, oh, I'm missing the quantity because, or not the quantity, the media type, because it's missing in the report as well. So it just helps you visualize looking at your output data to your input data essentially, and do some comparison that way. Right? And again, and if you want to refresh or go back to a reset and go back to the way it was, you just take that tab, left click and hold, and wait till you get these little handlebars in the middle and just drop it right in the middle. Put it in the wrong order up here, but you can always kind of shift over, like left click and slide it left or right, put it in whatever order you'd like it to be in. All right. Now the other thing with Classic versus Data Prep, with Data Prep, you're used to having these menu drop-down arrows at the top of your column headers. We do not have that here. You could right-click on anywhere here to actually create a new calculated field. But generally speaking, a lot of times what you're going to end up doing with Classic is if you want to add any new columns to your data that you don't get through templates, so either a calculated field, a lookup field, anything like that, you're going to want to go into table design. So Data Prep, it's right up front with you. Every single column header has a little drop-down arrow that you can select on to do the operation. But to add columns in Classic, you have to click on the table design button up here in the upper left. So I'm going to do that. When you first do that, it comes in with the field list selected, which means all of the fields you created, whether they come from templates or lookup fields or an external lookup, anything like that, they'll all be listed here by default. The next tab, or the next little, in our ribbon, if you look at our ribbon bar here, notice we have our field list selected. This next grouping over here is how you can kind of just view those particular fields. Like in this case, I wanted to look at just the formula fields. I would click there. Right now, I don't have any here, and it's giving me the option to add one, which I'm not going to do just yet. But again, I can just click on any of these types of fields here and see what I have in here. If I go this input field, this just essentially means anything that was created by a template. So if you have an Excel file that you brought in, this input field would be grayed out. So because this is a text or PDF file, my input field will list all my input fields over here on the left. All right. Now, I did mention, like, if I was going to add a formula field, again, you could kind of come over here and see the list of formula fields. And because I don't have any, I can click to add a new one. I would not get in the habit of using this button right here, because once you use it once, you can't really use it on an existing model if you already have formula fields. Best way to actually add the formula field here, once you're in table design, would actually come up here under this add button. And this is where you can actually see the different fields you could add, whether it's a formula, lookup, runtime, or user edit field. And this is also different. Like Data Prep doesn't have this concept of a user edit field, but this is where you also create filters and sorts. And then if you need an address block, you want to create your own function or an external lookup, you can come up here. Now, what I will show you what I'm going to do is I am going to click this, because I have no formula fields defined. I'm going to click on formula fields. I'm going to click this add to new formula field just so you can see why it's not a good habit to rely on that. And then let's just call, let's create a formula. Would have been helpful if I actually name these, but I'm going to do the quantity multiplied by the unit amount, which is this one, I believe. Hit apply, and you'll see we'll have a new column called formula column or formula field, because I didn't bother naming it, which I'll do right here. So I'll call it calculated amount. And because it's a dollar amount, I want 2 decimals. And go back into here. Now, if you do have an error in your formulas down here, you'll get a red box. Let's see if it will. Actually, well, right now it's telling me this field is no longer valid. Let's see. Well, if you get the red box up here, it means you have a problem with your, see any kind of red, whether it's outline or like you notice, like it doesn't recognize this field. It's saying this doesn't exist, or it can't interpret this field. It's telling you have a problem. So you have to actually go back and fix it before you can actually accept and apply this column. All right. So now, again, if I come back to my field list, I will now see I have my new field, calculated amount. Now, if I want to create a new calculated amount or a new calculated field, and I come to formula fields, notice I don't have that add a new formula field button here. It's because now we have one or more calculated fields or formula fields in here. I can't just click here and expect to add a new one. So again, if I wanted to add another one, I'd have to come over here to this add button anyway and say new formula field. Again, I can give it another name and then do whatever I need to. Like so in this case, let's see. Maybe I just want the first part of the description here. So this is very similar to, if you are familiar with data prep, this should look very similar. There are, I think there's slightly more functions I take that back. There's some different functions in Classic than there are in data prep, mostly like these working days up here. But again, you kind of pare this down to what you're looking for. Like in this case, I want to manipulate the description field, the string, and I just want to get the part before the comma. So I might say, just show me the string function. In this case, I'm looking for the lsplit function. So I'm going to split so if I just double click the function here, I'll move it down to my expression builder. And then now you can see it'll also, here's the function. And then the description with it down here at the bottom here. And it's going to position the cursor where it's expecting an input. In this case, it's looking for a string. And in my case, it's going to be the name of this field. And as I move the cursor over, notice that the string is highlighted. I'm going to move the cursor over one more field. Now it's saying max parts. So it's saying split into the most max parts using sep as a separator. So I want, in this case, I just want two parts. I want the part I want and the part I don't want, I'm just going to get rid of. Move that over. My separator is going to be the comma. Now, because it's a text, you have to use quotes. And then the very last part after the comma here is which part do you want? And I just want, because I'm doing it from the left, I want the first part and hit apply. And that should just give me everything before the comma here. So I'm going to hit accept just so it brings me into here, back into here. And we have our two new columns here. Again, now this, even though I create these new columns here, I can still, like say the 6224, I can still use this find report. It'll bring me right back to the exact line where it's using those information to pull from. So 8 times 778 gave me that dollar amount. Okay. The other nice thing with, well, I'm going to stick with table design here, Classic over data prep, and data prep just closed the gap a little bit, is the ability to have a name filter. Now in data prep, it's only available for like the most recent release of data prep, and you can only really use it for summaries and exports. But with Classic, you do have the ability to create filters and sorts and turn them on and off at will. So again, I'm going to say I want to create a new, let's go with a filter here, for instance. I'm going to use a formula-based filter. These are all similar to in Classic, or data prep, sorry. And I want to know total amount less than $10, just to give it a name, just so we know what it is. I'm going to use my calculate field. So make sure I hit the little check mark to make that available. I'm going to take the calculate field, and if it's less than 10, and hit apply. And again, when I come out, like right now, you see this little checkbox up here that make this the active filter. I can see down here I have 31 rows where the dollar amount's less than $10. If I leave this checkbox unchecked, I hit accept, when I come back out into table view, you'll notice up here my active filter is no filter. If I were to select that checkbox, make this the active filter. When I come out back in the table view, it actually sets the active filter to the one I was just on. All right, so same 31 rows, and I can see it. Now again, let's go back and just create one more quick filter here. Add filter. Let's just say, show me CDs. So which field is it? GCD. Again, there's probably more than one. There's more than one way of doing this. I'm just going for the nice, quick way. Hit apply. I'm going to make this the active filter. So when I come out, it'll only show me where this column has CDs in it. Now, again, with data prep, you can only stack filters on top of each other. But now with Classic, I have a list here, a drop-down list. I can actually choose what I want to see. So the total amount, CDs, and you can actually do compound filters with Classic as well. So I can take any of these filters I've created so far and apply them to my table view. Again, you can kind of get closer in data prep with this, again, through the Analyze and then the, I believe it's on the Export tab as well. All right. Any questions that haven't been answered? Let's stick into this. All right. Yeah, anytime you're working in Classic, if you do have a question on something, and again, I don't know why data prep doesn't have this, but there is a built-in compiled help file with Classic. The easy way to get to it is the F1 key on your keyboard, or you can kind of click on the help, the little question mark in the upper right here, and it'll open up a compiled help file. Now, because I was in table view, it's context sensitive. So because I was in table view, it automatically launched the help file and brought up the section on table view. So it tries to be helpful. So if I was on like summary, I click the help file, and of course it always opens on the wrong screen. Notice it showed up in summary view. So it kind of like helps you drill down into whatever you're on, and it's going to start pointing you in that right direction of how to get to what you're looking for. If you're looking for something else, like say I had a question on a function or something like that, I don't necessarily have to use the contents. I can always click on the index. Maybe I was looking for the L-split function. I can always type that in, and then just doing an index or searching. Well, yeah, same thing. The index will just give you a list of index. The searching is probably what I should have clicked on, but split. It'll list all the functions that deal with L-split. Right? And there was a submitted question about how to start a Classic session. So generally speaking, like if you're gonna go into Classic, you want to be in Classic mode. I kind of showed you earlier to make sure you don't have that checkbox in the option screen to launch in data prep anyway. But usually you get to the start menu by clicking on Altair Monarch Classic. And if you're looking, and they were asking about the help for it, and all they saw was information on data prep. So you can see this help file that I launched. The first few chapters in the help file actually do deal with data prep. So chapter 1 through chapter 5 all deal with data prep stuff. And then chapter 6 through chapter 15 deals with Monarch Classic. Okay. What's that? Yeah, so that was a quick table. Don't see any questions that haven't been answered yet. there are some, actually I will mention there are some differences between Classic and Data Prep when it comes to limitations. And let me see if I can find it here real quick. And because I don't memorize all these, so like with Monarch Classic, there are some limitations. But again, if you look up technical specifications, we do have one for Monarch Classic as well as Data Prep. So with like Classic, you're limited to just over 1,000 report files that can be opened simultaneously. But you'll see, if you scroll through here, you'll kind of see what some of the limitations are. With Data Prep, if we look at it real quick, you might notice that a lot of them, the limitation, I mean, right here, the limits, we don't necessarily limit you, we don't really limit you to do anything. It's just limited by your system resources. So whereas Classic, I could open up 1,024 input files, that limit does not exist here in Data Prep. So just something to be aware of, depending on what you're trying to do. I mean, I don't know anyone that would try to open up 1,000 files in Classic anyway, because it's just a beast to deal with. But you do have that option. Data Prep just kind of, you're only limited by what your machine allows you to. Once you run out of memory or hard drive space, then it's done. But Monarch does have a couple limitations. Just be aware of if you want to see what they are. It's in the help file. In this line length, 4,000 characters. Unfortunately, it's just a limit for that. Unfortunately, not much we can do about that at the moment. Yeah. Just quickly go down. Can you add a SQL table to Classic for a lookup on this? Yes. Yes. So the best way to do that is going to be through an external lookup. But it's not going to be as simple as saying if I go into table design, come here to add as an external lookup. You can kind of see what you can connect to. Yes, you can use SQL. However, you can't just actually call out SQL Server. You actually have to have a connection to it set up ahead of time. So whether it's an ODBC connection or an OLEDB connection, you'd have to have that created. So I do not have one on my machine here. But if you did have, so this would allow you to not only just like Microsoft SQL, it could be Oracle, anything that has an ODBC driver. If you set that up on your machine through the ODBC wizard, you can reference that through here where it says Open Database through the ODBC connection. Like I don't have anything set up here, but again, it would, if I did have the SQL driver on here, I would create a connection. I would actually have it here, and I could connect to it and use it as an external lookup to my table here. Now, the one caveat on that is, and this is why I find Data Prep to kind of really beat a Classic, is the lookup feature. With Classic, when we're doing lookups like that, whether you're bringing another Excel file, a database, a ODBC connection, anything like that, this lookup you're performing is a simple one-to-one or many-to-one relationship. So if you need it, it's only going to return the first, if it has a match, it's only going to return the first value that it finds. If you're trying to do a one-to-many or many-to-many relationship, with Classic, it's always going to return just the first row. And again, that's kind of where Data Prep excels. On the Combine tab, you have like the 7 different types of connections. Here, you're just limited to the one-to-one or many-to-one relationship. All right, having said that, yeah, so if you want to bring in another database or another Excel file, anything like that, you can do that through an external lookup. And again, that's kind of hidden. Everything that you're anytime you want to add a column of data to your existing table, it's always going to be hidden behind that table design button, and then usually this add button. So whether you're adding a formula field, a lookup field, and a lookup field is slightly different than the external lookup because you're just building an internal table based off the data you have. But connecting to another database, you're going to use an external lookup here. All right. Yeah, I mean, I unfortunately with just the 50 minutes or so we have, it's not enough time to go through everything possible with classics. I'm just going to kind of jump over through summary and export real quick. Just so you can kind of get the high overview here. Summary view, again, we have this, it's called Analyze and Data Prep. This is slightly different with Classic. Oops, sorry. So again, we don't have any summaries created here, so we have to add a summary. So to add a summary, just go into Summary Design and either click Add Summary. Again, you'll have this button here until you have, as soon as you have at least one summary, you won't see this button again. Once you have a summary, this button goes away, and to add future summaries, you want to click this Add Summary button up here. Right? And then again, give it a name. For summary. And this is where data prep started closing the gap, is that you can actually use the name filters in data prep now. So if you had these, you could actually select them. Actually, we'll say total less than 10. Right. Now again, it's slightly different from data prep because now you're like, all right, now what do I do? You just pretty much on the property where you can just change the name and choose a filter, maybe change the font of what you're looking at. So to actually choose the field that you want to be a part of your summary, you actually have to come up here into this Add Remove Fields. And this will start to look closer to what data prep looks like. But again, I'm going to take in like just to add your keys. So if it's a text field, it can be an item or a key. If it's a numeric field, it could be any of them. So you can only, if the only thing that can be a measure is a numeric field, just same thing as in Classic, data prep, sorry. So I'm gonna say, I wanna find out based off this, who sold something, the media type as an item, and then the calculated amount as a measure. Something real quick. Hit accept, and now I can see my summary. You know, and not a lot of time to go into all the great details of summary. And unfortunately, I don't have time to really show you. The nice thing with the summary in Classic that data prep doesn't have is the ability to limit or do color limits. Coloring limits. So you could actually throw if something's out of spec, you could actually color that as something like, so let's see, trying to